We're back. We're talking a special edition here with the one and only Ted Nugent's drummer, Jason Hartless. Of course, check him out on that Adios Mofo tour. But more importantly, Jason's here to talk about the development, the start, the seed that has been planted that he put in Ted's ears, and now we're all the benefactors of it. It is the Ted Nugent Vault, Volume 1. Jason, talk about that, hanging out with Ted at his house. How did you notice that there was this box of all these tapes, and how did it evolve from there?
Well, we did not tour in 20 and 21 due to the pandemic. So, all of our cases had been sitting in his barn since end of the summer of 2019. So over a two and a half year period, boxes just started piling up on top of the cases and what have you. So late last spring, early summer, I was at the ranch getting my gear together to go out on the road, and I start moving boxes off my cases just to get stuff, and I find just boxes and boxes full of tapes, cassette tapes, and just tons and tons of, hundreds of cassette tapes. And I start looking at them, and I start reading what's on them, and it's like live in 80, live in 77, demos, rough mixes. I'm like, whoa, hold on. These absolutely have to get archived, whether they get released or not, they absolutely have to get transferred, because it's in a non-climate controlled environment. So I went to Ted. I was like, look, these had something's got to be done with these. And he's like, well, take them and archive them, start doing stuff. And I took him back to my home studio and I started transferring some of this stuff, and it overseeded my expectation. I was concerned that a lot of these tapes were already destroyed, being that they had sat in a barn in Michigan for 20, 30, 40 years. Well, after a lot of restoration and care of the tapes themselves, we've been able to archive hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of board tapes, demos, rough mixes, what have you. We have so much material that maybe only 1% of what we have will ever get heard, because we have just so much stuff. And even then, we've now started getting into, we found 2-inch tape and 1/4-inch tape masters from live shows that were never released or did anything with, master recordings of outtakes in the studio. So that we've got a lot of stuff that diehard Nugent fans and classic rock fans are going to be just Googling over the next several years. It kind of started a little bit last Black Friday for Record Store Day in 2022. My record label, Sound City Records, that I own with my parents, because my dad's been in the music industry his entire life. And I had been hired on for about 6-7 years at a label called Prudential Records, and I built that company into a pretty successful vinyl industry. Well, I about a year ago decided it was time to part ways with the business partners at Prudential, and at that time it was like, all right, well, I think it's good to kind of resurrect my family's record label that they've had since the early 90s, Sound City Records. And lo and behold, 2-3 months after that, I stumble upon all these tapes. Well, we were already in the process of working on a vinyl release of the Spirit of the Wild record from 1995, and it had never been put on vinyl. And the unreleased stuff kind of started because we, being that Spirit of the Wild was not created in the vinyl era, it was too long of an album for a single LP, and it was too short of an album for a double LP. So we had space for about 2 songs. Well, I went back to the Michael Lutz from Brownsville Station, who had produced that record, and said, "Hey, do you have any unreleased stuff, rough mixes, or something?" And he goes, "We actually have two completely unreleased songs from those sessions." So we ended up putting that on the vinyl, and that was kind of the beginning stages of us putting out a lot of this unreleased or rare stuff. Since then we put out Warrior Cup about a month ago, which was a single that Ted did in '98 for the Detroit Red Wings Stanley Cup run. And then this past record store day here in April of 2023, the NUGENT Volume 1 was the really the official big launch of all this unreleased stuff. And we're planning on over the next several years about 2 to 3 releases. Whether they're part of the NUGENT or not, they will still be unreleased or rare releases that just have not been available. And we haven't officially announced it, but we have been talking about it a little bit. I mean, this summer, on the Adios Mofo tour, we will have hopefully, if supply chain issues are resolved with vinyl pressing, but we should have a 12-inch Fredbear EP, which is going to consist of 4 versions of Fredbear on a 12-inch vinyl, which is this original studio recording, the Hunt music version of it, a instrumental version of our acoustic version that we did on the Music Made Me Do It record, which has not been released, and then a unreleased live version from 1994 with Michael Carlone from the Damn Yankees on drums and Michael Lutz on bass. So we're starting to pull a lot of different things from all this material and trying to figure out, okay, how can we utilize all this the best way possible, because there's just absolutely no way we can release every single thing that we have. And that's kind of the situation we're in right now, is we're brainstorming what the most optimal way to make sure the fans really get to hear this stuff. And the NUGENT collection will be all of the rare stuff that is associated with a certain album. Like Volume 1 was the Free for All. I can't get too much into the details of it, but Volume 2 will be associated with the first Ted Nugent album. Future Nuge volumes will be the Scream Dream album as well. But either way, we have a lot of amazing stuff, and now it's just trying to figure out what's the best way to utilize it.
Yeah, well, I know it's as a fan, as a friend, and as a bandmate, it's exciting to hit play on these tapes, not knowing what you're going to hear, and seeing your jaw drop and like, whoa,
Especially when they are. I've had some insane mouth drop moments when I've put on a tape that was unmarked or mismarked, and it comes to be something 10 times better than what was actually marked on that tape. So there's been some, pretty incredible moments, listening to all this stuff. And because it's on tape, I'm forced to listen to everything, so and on top of that, we're able to catalog, every nook and cranny that's on these tapes. And, again, we've got so much material that we will never be able to release everything, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, the cream of the crop will rise, the jewels in the mine, so to speak. You're panning for gold, and I know you give us the nuggets. So that's all that we hope. And I know with Sound City Records, you guys are planning all sorts of other releases and other bands. And I know through your past, like with the Sweet record up there and some other greats, that you've your heart, even though you weren't even alive when some of these things were recorded, they mean a lot to you, and that they transcend generations. You may have been born in a different generation, but you realize you go to even some of Ted shows and you see original Ted fans, you see their offspring, and you see their grandkids. There's at least 3 generations, if not more, at a Ted show. Same, you go to a Stone show, there's like 4 generations. It's
Right.
pretty amazing, the love for this music. What do you think it was about that decade, the 70s, coming off the 60s and the protests and the folk movement and the flower power and all that? What to you, when you look back, What do you think is so special about that decade of the 70s?
You know, it's really hard to pinpoint, and I've thought about this, you know, internally before, because, you know, me as a consumer, you know, I listen to everything from 40s big band jazz, which I'm a huge fan of, all the way up. You know, honestly, I listen as a consumer, I listen to everything up until about 1992 when Jeff Porcaro died, and that's when kind of music as a consumer I dislike. Anything after that, there's very few things after that that I really enjoy. But there was that magic period between, you know, 1963, let's say, to, you know, 1991, 1992, that just has music that will never be replicated. You know, I don't know if it was the, you know, the state of the world at the time, the musicians at the time, the previous influences at the time. But you know, we kind of look back of how songs were recorded as well. You know, we were tracking everything on tape, you know, so you had to be on the pinnacle of musicianship. You could not be a mediocre musician to record in the studio. And unfortunately, with Pro Tools, which I love the digital era in terms of, you know, it makes everything easy, it makes everything streamlined. We've lost a lot of that organic quality that, you know, cutting to 2-inch tape, you know, kind of had. I was lucky that my first session when I was 5 years old was cutting on ADAT, which is still technically digital, but it was on a tape, you know. So I kind of grew up in that era of you had to get it done the right way the first time or the second time, because you can't keep doing it. You can't, you know, edit everything, splice it, move it, copy, paste, you know, do all this stuff. But unfortunately, most everybody in my generation and the generation after um is grown up with the Pro Tools mindset that we can just cut and paste, we can move it, we can change it, we can resample it, we can do all this digital manipulation. And of course, now we're in a very, very bad position in the music industry with AI technology starting to take over how songs are written, how songs are even created, which is just completely taking any humanistic quality of what makes music so great, um you know, just kind of taken away. And you know, as a music industry executive, I'm the first one that wants to make as much money as possible. And of course, that's what these labels are trying to do. They're trying to make as much money as possible by using this AI technology to just create cookie cutter versions of songs that they know that, you know, will make a lot of money. All for that. But I'm not all for musicians and humans not being involved in music. As a studio drummer, you know, I've seen my industry as a studio drummer start to go away because people would rather just program drums than actually hire a drummer. Well, the problem is you're hiring the wrong drummer that can't do a song in 1 or 2 takes. You know, the producers want to program it because it saves them money at the end of the day. So it's just really, really become a very disappointed, and or at least that's what the way that it looks like it's approaching, um, to become a very disappointing turn in this industry. Hopefully, we can continue to keep real musicians working and keep real musicians creating organic music that can live on. But, you know, going back to the original question, unfortunately, at least I don't see it. Hopefully I'm deadly wrong, but I don't think we'll ever see a time where music is created like the 60s, 70s, and 80s. There's just those bands will live on for the test of time. There's a lot of bands from the last 20 years that people have already forgotten about. Most of them they've already forgot about, but most of the bands from the 60s, 70s, and 80s, no one's forgot about. You know, they're all still commanding all of the airwaves. They're still commanding all the sync placement in movies and TV and commercials. They're still selling the tickets. You know, You look at Ted Nugent, he's been in the industry 60 years. We're about to go on a sold out, farewell tour. Rolling Stones sell out arenas still. The Who sell out arenas still. Kiss sell out arenas still. But a lot of the newer artists, they have trouble selling out 1,500 seat theaters. They have trouble selling out, 700 seat theaters. And nothing against any of the new artists, because everybody's making great stuff. As a musician and as an industry person, everyone makes great music. It's the matter of, consumers just gravitate towards real music, real musician. I wouldn't say real musicianship. I would say just that whatever that was in the water back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s that culminated those genres and those iconic albums. We don't have that anymore. And it's just such a disappointing thing. Hopefully we have a change in the industry to kind of move back towards the old way of the industry that keeps musicians working and making money.
We appreciate all you do, Jason, our Rock Forever